Right, everybody, welcome. So, before you go any further, you are going to get a CPD qualification out of this. Woohoo! That's twice I've been described as CPD, which frankly is a worry. What you're not going to get out today is a first aid qualification, just to be absolutely clear, because if we could all do it in 45 minutes, it would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Right? So that's not what's going to happen today. What I want to do today, and some of you might have seen the article that was in the brochure there in front of you, I want to talk to you about immersive scenario-based training and actually why it's so important. I'm going to have a wager with you that 90% of the first aid training you have ever been on is ineffective, inappropriate, and not compliant. Simple as that. More importantly, what we're actually interested in is saving lives. I am done with box ticking, particularly when we come to things like first aid training. So what we're going to do today in our little moment of time is we are going to prove to you or disprove some of the crazy myths that people talk about when we come to first aid training. And I want to hear from all of you at the end of it whether you think we're right or wrong, so that's your call. Also, who's got an in-date first aid certificate? Oh, yes.
Not me.
Here we go. So, right, first of all, how many people do we think in the UK, or in Europe actually, have ever been sued for doing first aid? How many? Yep, none. Zero, none whatsoever. It is an urban myth, right? So the first tip to take out of today is have a go. No matter what happens, get stuck in and have a go, okay? You didn't kill somebody, maybe you couldn't save somebody. That is not the same conversation. I'll tell you one thing's for certain though, if you don't have a go, you definitely won't save them. Simple as that. Anybody will need your help. So that's where we're going to start. We are going to talk about three really simple things that I'm going to come back to in a minute. If they're bleeding, stop it. If they are not breathing, help them breathe. If they are cold, make them warm. Of the three things on there, which do you think is the biggest killer on the roads in the UK? Which one of these three things, life-threatening bleeding, heart attacks or hypothermia, kills more people? Hypothermia. See what we're talking about? Why is that? Because we do the really cool first aid bit and then we go, oh, did really well there, we walk away, and obviously the patient's bled out and we've got a massive problem, okay? We're going to bust some rumours around, that's kind of the point. Where does this all come from? Well, let's go back a couple of steps. As my wife likes to point out, that's a really old photograph. But I'm clinging to it, okay? So give me it, right, okay? My background, for those of you, sorry if some of you were here yesterday, but essentially I'm ex-special operations, right? I'm a covert human intelligence officer. My job was to work all around the world, kind of recruiting and running foreign assets, as Simon likes to call them. The point about that was, it's about working in small teams. When we used to give operational briefings, the bit I used to like at the bottom said self-rescue or self-recovery, which basically is a very polite way of saying nobody is coming to help you. So therefore, you take a vested interest in having the right skills to be able to look after you and more importantly, to look after your teammates. As I said to some of you yesterday, make some pretty poor holiday choices. And in 2015, I decided it would be a good idea to go and climb Mount Everest. Has anybody seen Aftershocks on Netflix? So essentially, 2015 was the biggest earthquake since ever to hit that region. Nearly 8,000 people killed in Kathmandu, 200 people killed on the side of the mountain, and what went from a mountaineering expedition turned pretty rapidly into a massive rescue and evasion exercise. So I got a vested interest in that kind of level of care and support. This here is Mike. Mike is actually our chief first aid instructor. Mike has a similar background to me. Mike's background is covert communications. So Mike's job was essentially to break into your house, leave cameras and microphones all over the place, record everything you say and do, and get out again without you ever knowing he was there. Who's got a mobile phone on them? Thank you very much for your data.
Appreciate it.
So what I would say, of course, at this point is if you disagree with me or Mike at any stage during this presentation, just have a long, hard think about where you want to send that feedback. Because we have both spent a lifetime acquiring a set of skills, and essentially one of us will find you. So, on with the presentation. Where we got to? So, right then, I'm going to show my age a little bit. I'm guessing it's not a massively young audience. Sorry, Laura. Right, so here we go. Who remembers ABC? Airways, breathing, circulation, yeah? Yeah, okay, sorry, that's nonsense. ABC became DABC, became Dr. ABC, became D brackets R, DABC, became Dr. brackets C, ABC. Some people use March. And then my favorite one of all, it became CAC, BCD. And CAC is the way it should be considered. Why is that? Because this is designed to create classroom training, not to save lives, okay? We're not in the business of training paramedics. If you want to do that, go and become a paramedic. It takes 3 or 4 years, right? What we're in the business of is saving lives. My biggest fear, honestly, with all of this sort of stuff, is that one day I'm lying there on the ground, having made another poor holiday choice, and somebody comes along and I'm bleeding to death, and the person is kneeling over me and they're going, oh no, am I on the C or the B? Is this the D or the bracket C or the D? Or do I do the doctor, then the bracket C, then the CAC, BD? Either way round, I'm a loser. Does that make sense? We've got to think operationally, guys, right? And the theme of what we're talking about today is you have to think operationally, not classroom training. If any of you are responsible for drivers, for workers, for factories, for warehouses, sitting in a classroom is not how you need to be thinking. You need to be thinking, what are my team doing? Where are they? And what is happening to them? And that's how we run training. It's also law, by the way, which we'll come back to shortly. Now then, have a look at this photograph for a second. That's Mike there. That's me there, looking particularly handsome. This is a more recent photograph. Who would like to hazard a guess who all the other people in that photograph are? I'll give you a tip, and I don't mean this disrespectfully. They are not soldiers. Who wants to hazard a guess at where they might come from?
Yeah, Ukraine.
Ukraine, right? These are Ukrainian volunteers. I'll let you another secret. This wasn't taken in Britain. So 18 months ago, we were 4 hours east of Kyiv on an air base called Poltava in the middle of the Ukraine. We were avoiding Russian model aircraft. Read into that what you want. And these people's job was to take the casualties off the helicopters as they were popping back off the front line. We could hear the gunfire in the distance. 4 weeks before this photograph was taken, everybody in that photograph was a bartender, taxi driver, bus driver, hairdresser, you name it. When I say these people were volunteers, they weren't the TA or the reserves. They were people that had signed up to do their bit. This is not a political statement, guys. I just want you to understand the level of training. The only med training they got before going onto the front line was a day with us. That was it. Can you imagine what that must be like? We were talking about resilience yesterday. This is kind of off the chart, kind of whole different level, right? When we start to put this forward. Anyway, what we did is we looked at this and we said, wow, should we run a first aid at work course for these people? Should we talk about measles and mumps and rubella? And we said, probably not. Because of all the things like to get them in the next couple of days, it's not going to be that. So we stripped it apart. And we taught them what we have come to know as a Save a Life course. If they're bleeding, stop it. If they're not breathing, help them breathe. If they're cold, make them warm. Simple as that. That's what we put together. And we trained them. And sadly, we left the base 24 hours, 48 hours later. We were there about 2 weeks in total. We left the base, and the following day, just after we'd gone, they were massively attacked from the air. And all of the people in that photograph there, they took 40% casualties, 40% casualties, and no fatalities, none. Now, we can't claim complete credit for that, but I did get a really nice letter from the Ukrainian government, it's now on my wall at home, thanking us for our efforts. By the way, if ever you think you haven't got time to write a thank you letter, just saying, they're pretty busy right now and they found time, right? They sent us this fantastic letter and they said, you know what, we think you made a little bit of a difference. I went, okay, we're happy with that. But then we started to reflect on that and we started to look at that and we said to ourselves, well, this is crazy. How have we taught these people in a matter of hours to save lives? And yet in the UK, we send our teams away on a 3-day first aid course, 8 hours a day, and they come back no more able to deal with first aid than when they went away. They might understand it a bit more, but they're no better able to deal with it. I'll challenge any of you here, by the way, if you want us to come and run a scenario at your business, let's see how good they are, all right? And we'll go from there. So when we looked at that, we said, well, the problem is it's got to be condensed. It's got to be more effective to make it work. Of those 150 people we trained, I should have mentioned before, only 2 of them spoke English. So we actually managed to create hands-on training without having to talk to anybody at all, which, as you can imagine, for me was pretty challenging as it goes, right? But it was fairly effective. So we thought, well, this is what we need to do. We need to change the way training is delivered in the UK. We need to focus on our outcome, because our outcome is to save people's lives, whether that's people in our own workplaces or actually in a situation of the road to go somewhere else. Here's an interesting statistic. I spent a little bit of time in Nadi Ali. It's a place in Helmand province in the middle of Afghanistan. By the time that I was there, it was a pretty leery place to be. And statistically, you were still more likely to be killed on the roads in the UK. Madness, right? And yet we do nothing about it. Why is that? Because we get in cars every day and people don't like to think about it. Sadly, what Afghanistan did for us, and Iraq before it, was we got a 12-year lesson in trauma care. Sadly, right? And that's why ABC went out the window. Who was taught, first thing to do is look after the airway? Yeah, we've all been taught that at some point, okay? Here's an interesting thing. The oxygen in you is carried in your blood, right? If you're leaking, the oxygen is getting out. When you fill your bath up, do you just turn the taps on, or do you put the plug in first, right? If it's leaking, you've got to stop the leak before you can do anything else. Bleeding is more important than breathing. And when I say bleeding, by the way, I'm not talking about like nicking yourself shaving, okay? We're talking about life-threatening bleeds. When the MOD first started to look at Iraq and Afghanistan, they went, do you know what? What we need is more helicopters, more paramedics, more trauma surgeons. And then they went, no, we don't. What we actually need to do is we need to teach the basics better to people on the ground. And what we need to do is we need to keep people alive until the people that know what they're doing get there. And it's turned the way initial treatment and training is delivered. The problem is we're not catching up in this industry. And we're also not compliant. But I'll come back to that in a minute. Just as a quick frame of reference before we get Malcolm out here, has anybody ever read the Health and Safety at Work First Aid Act or document? It was amended in March 2024, if you're interested, to incorporate life-threatening bleeds and bleed kits. My recommendation is that you take my word for it, because it will be a month of your life that you will never get back, right? However, the opening paragraph of that document says quite clearly, you should have a first aid assessment. That is not a risk assessment. That is a first aid assessment. Because what it says is, you've done a jolly good job of doing your risk assessment, and in your risk assessment, it talks about road traffic collisions as an example. What your first aid assessment then says is, you've identified road traffic collisions. What would you do about them medically, and how would you train your people? It makes sense, right? Which is strange, because the HSE get a bad rep. Your first aid assessment is unique to you and your training environment. Guess what it then goes on to say later in the document? It says your training and your equipment should match your first aid assessment. This is not rocket science, is it? I hear you thinking. I'm going to challenge all of you. When you get back to work, sidle into work quietly. Your compliance and health and safety officers are going to hate me, right? And ask them, can I see our first aid assessment, please? And we'll have a bet as to how many companies have got one, shall we? I think it's similar to the number of people that have been sued for delivering first aid in the UK, to be honest with you, right? So, who here is involved with kind of road traffic stuff, like professionally? Who's got drivers, goes driving? Yeah, a few of you. What about kind of engineering-y type stuff? Warehouses, forklift trucks, engineering equipment? Yeah, brilliant. So presumably, all of the first aid training that either you or your teams did was either on the road or in the warehouse or using live action stuff, yeah? No. You did it in a classroom, didn't you? And you sat in a classroom either for 1 day or 3 days, right? Therefore, by the document, does your training reflect your environment and your risk? No, right? So you are not compliant. It's as simple as that. because it makes sense that the two have to match the other. And what will happen nowadays, anybody familiar with Martin's Law? It's after the Manchester bombings, right? So what will happen nowadays, that nobody expects you to be a paramedic, but what will happen is they will come along and they'll go, right, Mr. Compliance Officer, HR Director, whatever you might be, this is terrible, you've had an incident at work, it's a bit of a shame, let's have a look at it. And they go, well, Mike here did his best. Okay, no problem. Let's just have a look at Mike's training, shall we? Oh, well, we see that you work in a shunting yard with Arctic lorries and ramps to service trucks on, as an example, right? And then we look at the training program, and it says here, well, you sent Mike off to sit and look at PowerPoint for 8 hours in a classroom, and he definitely covered bumps, rubella, and meningitis. There's nothing wrong with any of those things, by the way. I mean, there is. They're horrible. But so therefore, that does not equate this. Now you've got a problem. Because you sent your employee on a tick box exercise that didn't reflect their risk, right? And it is as simple as that. Nobody expects you to be a paramedic. Let's fast forward. What happens is they go away. Mike has an accident. I come along. I do my bit. HSE come in. They have a look at it and they go, oh, crikey, look at that. That was terrible. Hang on a minute. We sent Tim away on a hands-on scenario-based course that reflected the environment that he was operating in. Unfortunately, Tim was a bit rubbish at it, so he didn't manage to save Mike. But the point was, the organisation gave him, or me, the best opportunity to succeed, and that's what you've got to do, not box ticking. Does that make sense, guys, yeah? And the same matches your kit, and that's what we're going to prove in a minute. Now then, any motorsport fans in the room? Any motorsport fans in the room? Yeah, so any rally fans? Any rally fans? Because, yeah, the roundy guys don't like the wet today, and it's all a bit, whatever. So this actually is named after Malcolm Wilson, the boss of M Sport, factory rally teams. It's actually my wife's godfather, so he's not here, so I can be rude, essentially. So Malcolm here is very, very accident prone. Every time we go anywhere, he has a near-death experience. I don't know why I take him with us, to be completely honest with you. So my risk assessments are terrible. But Malcolm here bleeds out at the same rate that you do, give or take, right? Give or take. Malcolm here bleeds out the same rate as you do. And in a minute, because I'm just kind of that way inclined, I'm going to make Malcolm bleed. Sorry. It's not real blood, by the way, just in case anybody's worried. We sometimes get people on courses that come up to us and they go, I think these scenarios are a bit too real for me. They're too stressful. I'm not happy with it. And I go, they're not quite as stressful as if Malcolm got his arm stuck in the lathe for real. So maybe question whether the first aid is for you. Anyway, so Malcolm here is going to bleed out at the correct rate, give or take, right? It varies a little bit person to person. Who wants to hazard a guess from when Malcolm starts to bleed? It sounds terrible, doesn't it? Anyone walking past must be going, what? Who wants to hazard a guess from when Malcolm starts to bleed? How long have you got to save his life? How long have you got? What do we think?
If you're good.
What do we think? 3 minutes. Hold that thought. We like to talk about a golden hour sometimes, don't we? Don't know how much blood's in you if you think that. Yeah, you're about 2 minutes. 2.5 minutes before he is non-recoverable. Okay? 2.5 minutes before he is non-recoverable, right? How many ambulances in the UK do you think carry blood? None. Occasionally the air ambulance, depending on where you're fortunate enough to have sufficient budget, essentially, and hoping they've got the right blood for you as well. So Malcolm here is going to bleed out in the right time. Into this bucket here is going to bleed about 2.5 litres of blood in the right amount of time. I want you to look at that. And I might ask somebody to go and find me a first aid kit in a minute, because we're going to need some help here. Simon, you can't go because I know you've rigged it already. Right. So I might ask somebody to find me a kit. If you don't get picked on to find a first aid kit, what I want somebody to think about is, as you're watching that, think about your place of work. Think about, where would I go to get a first aid kit? Where would I find it? How would I get it? Could I get it back to this person fast enough? Because what we need to talk about is thinking operationally. The treatment is easy, right? Response is more difficult, and that's the bit that nobody plans for. So, Mikey, shall we make Malcolm bleed? Right, Malcolm is bleeding. Oh, this is terrible, terrible. Somebody find me a first aid kit. Literally, somebody find me a first aid kit. The goddamn hall is full of them. Somebody find me a first aid kit. I'm not even joking, guys. Come on, someone, on your feet. Somebody find me a first aid kit. We've got 2 minutes. Somebody get me a first aid kit. 2 minutes. We've got to fight. You can't nick mine. We've got to, I like your thinking.
Every time.
Somebody's got to be one here somewhere, right? Every stand here, presumably, has done a risk assessment and has a first aid kit on the stand. I'm not finding any help. No one is helping me. Oh, I'm glad you did that, because that's not going to work.
Thank God for that.
Somebody's got to help me. Standos, guys, you've got a first aid kit. Has anyone got a first aid kit? Somebody help me. Somebody help me. Has anybody got a first aid kit? I've got about a minute left. We're not getting much response, are we?
It's all right.
You know, all of those people that were not letting you get in today because you hadn't got a lanyard on, all of those people, part of their role is to provide a med kit when we need it at speed. I haven't even seen a single person turn up. Not cool, right? Actually, in the grand scheme of things. Every single stand here has done a risk assessment to say, we've got our first aid covered off. Not a single person could find me a first aid kit. Is he done, Mike?
He's now gone. He's lost about, coming up to 2 litres now. And Malcolm's starting to go, oh, I don't feel so good, Mike. I might have to take a seat for a second. And about half a minute later, he's going to go over. That's
right.
him.
So let's dispel a few more rumours. I love a bit of this, by the way, right? We're near the Bear Grylls adventure, aren't we, right? Because this is all a bit Bear Grylls, isn't it? Very quick story. Do you know why I love Bear Grylls? How much do you think Bear Grylls is for 45 minutes after dinner? Between 150 and 210,000 pounds, right? And what happens is quite regularly, those that saw me yesterday, I get booked to speak, and my agent phoned me up and he goes, Tim, good news, these people are interested in having you along. Just to let you know, they're also phoning Bear Grylls. And I go, brilliant. Because what happens is 3 hours later, they phone me up and they go, Tim, Bear Grylls is busy that day? I'm like, is he? Okay, so let's dispel a few myths. Let's assume, we haven't got time for a full medical lesson, we're not going to do it. So let's assume this is an arterial bleed and we need to stop it. How much pressure do you think you need to apply to stop that bleed? Hey? Yeah, but how much pressure do you think that is? Shall I tell you? 40 foot-pounds of pressure. 40 foot-pounds of pressure. What do we think would happen if I used something like this, or a bootlace, and applied 40 foot-pounds of pressure to it? We go back to my old job, and we have a bit of a garrote, right? Is what happens when we do that. It doesn't work. The other one we like to hear quite a lot of is the old belt gag. Yeah, get the belt out. That'd be literally brilliant, right? Anybody ever tried to apply? Don't answer that question. Trying to apply 40 foot-pounds of pressure through a belt. What's then the biggest problem? Even if I could create 40 foot-pounds of pressure, what's the biggest challenge then? I can't move, because the minute I release that pressure, he's going to die. Simple as that, right? So I'm now stuck. We haven't called an ambulance. I haven't moved. I haven't got any help. I'm completely stuck trying to apply 40 foot-pounds of pressure through a belt I can't tie off. Guys, it's movie nonsense, right? I'm not suggesting don't have a go. It doesn't work. You have to have the right kit with you. Right, so let's assume we're following this through. We're going to teach you how to do this in just a minute for a bit of fun. We're applying 40 foot pressure. What do we need to do? What's the first thing we need to do? Help. We need to get some help, right? Who's going to call me an ambulance? Somebody call me an ambulance. Right, Chris, call me an ambulance. Sorry, you shouldn't have sat there. Chris, call me an ambulance. I'll be the control centre. Come on in. 999, control centre, how can I help you? Which service would you like, sir? Like an ambulance service. Is the casualty breathing and conscious? Excellent, okay. Tier 2, we'll send you an ambulance service on the way. Whereabouts are you? You're in the middle of Birmingham. That'll narrow it down, sir. Brilliant. We're coming from Warwick. How do I get there? See my point, guys? I'm picking on Chris because I know him and you look really angry. So, my point is this, guys. How many times on your first aid lesson, the most important thing you can do is call an ambulance? During that lesson, did somebody go, oh, I've called the ambulance? Yeah? Just out of interest, how would a paramedic get to here? If you had to phone a paramedic and get help, and this was real, how would they get to here? Which gate, which roundabout, which access code, which barriers? Christ alive, the guy wouldn't even let me drop my kit off earlier, let alone bring a paramedic in. Do you see what I'm getting at, guys? We go through the motions. We've got a client at the moment that is having an interview without coffee with HSE because they did a really good job at a first aid, ambulance couldn't get in because they needed a magnetic fob to get through the key gate. It is a crucial part of what you need to do. The ambulance sat outside for 6 minutes because they couldn't get through the gate. Why is that? Because their training was not operationally focused. because they go through the motions. Oh, yeah, I've called the ambulance. Yeah, I've called the ambulance. I can see you all nodding. We've all done it, right? Just out of interest, what sort of ways could we do? How can we get around that problem? A couple of things. What do you think? What can we do? Maybe through a security centre. It's all taking time, though, isn't it? Yeah, agreed. What 3 words? Yeah, OS Maps app. Google Maps will give you a lat and long. All of this sort of stuff, guys. You need to think about it, okay? 2 of our clients we've worked with recently, we had a lovely couple of days with Holland & Holland. They're £250,000 for a pair of guns. See me afterwards, so I get commission. But what we did is we've actually laminated what 3 words on all of their gates and locations, so that, because guess what? If you're the trained first aider, who's calling the ambulance? Probably not you. So the person next to you may not know where you are. Does that make sense, guys? We need to think operationally. Okay, so let's go back a couple of steps. I'm going to ask Mikey to show you this first. Who's got, and I should hide the brand, but I'm not going to. Who's got something like this, or a little green box? Yeah? Something similar to that. So you're safe, right? You're compliant. This is good news. So let's wind a couple of steps. Here we go. He's gushing blood, 2 litres. I need to apply 40 foot-pounds of pressure. Luckily, I am diligent. I've ticked all the health and safety boxes, and I am going to save...
oh, thanks, that'll do it. No, God.
I'm going to save... Oh, it's okay. We've got some... Mike, safety pin him back together, would you? Safety pin him back together again. Oh, it's more, big safety pins, right? Oh, it's okay.
Blisters.
Blister plasters. Brilliant. We're going to save Malcolm with a blister plaster. There we go. But luckily, we've got some antiseptic wipes, because they're about as much use as that as well.
I give in.
Do I make my point? Right? We put green boxes on. Right? There's a place, they could be blue or red, sorry, first aid for where you are over there, right? I make my point, right? There's a place for a green box, of course there is, right? Because we do nick ourselves at work, we have minor ailments and all that sort of stuff. Do not confuse that with being compliant and being able to save a life, because it is not the same thing. If I needed, I'm getting Mike to show you in a minute, but if I needed to get to the casualty to stop that bleed, we didn't get talk about heart attacks yet, to stop that bleed, what's one of the first things I've got to do to his clothing, her clothing? Get it off. You have fun weekends, sir, right? Right, I've got to get down to the skin, haven't I? Luckily for me, my first aid kit has got in it my first scissors. And these are frankly brilliant if you want to make Christmas decorations. Failing that, they're a bit of a waste of time, right? And they're one of my pet hates in first aid kits. How many of your staff, team, colleagues wear PPE? Most of them. How effective, if incidentally, put your hand up for me, sir. Yeah, they ain't going in there, are they? Look. Right? Trying to do that in a hurry. That literally, we're just ticking boxes. Don't bother. Put them in the bin. It's a waste of time. You're not compliant, right? It's not going to work. So you need kit in there that you can deal with. Your truck drivers, engineers, whatever they might be, traffic highway officers, right, are not getting their hands in there. And even if they could, it ain't cutting through there. And it's definitely not cutting through PPE, is it? Right? So we need to start thinking operationally. Okay, so I've given you the problem. Let's start to solve it a little bit. Mikey, how might we solve this problem?
Okay. Has anyone ever seen one of these before?
Watch my risk assessment. There's first aid kit everywhere.
Right. So this is a CAT combat applied tourniquet. Okay, there are lots of tourniquets on the market. This has been proven over time to be the best tourniquet you can get. Buck for buck, it's a brilliant piece of kit. It looks a complicated piece of kit. It's not. It's very simple to use. Okay. I won't go through a whole lesson of how to apply tourniquet, where it goes. So I'm going to show using it on Tim. Okay. And then I'd like a volunteer in a minute. So when Malcolm got his injury, he actually lost his hand. Right. The problem is when we lose our hand, our arteries and veins are elasticated, and when we have a blunt force trauma like that, they shoot back up the arm. Okay. So we need to put the tourniquet in a set place. Just for this purpose of demonstration, I'm just going to put it high and as tight as I can. Does that make sense? So
if he's bleeding, stop it.
So it's going to go on the arm. I'm going to pull it tight. Look, no, I'm not rushing. And I'm going to pull that on the as tight as I can. Okay? When it goes on, I shouldn't be able to get 2 fingers under it. All I'm going to do then is literally turn the tap off. I'm going to watch the bleed and start to twist what they call the windlock. and I'll twist and twist and twist and twist, and I'll lock it off eventually. Okay? Then I see it stopped bleeding. Great. Just going to tuck that in there. Pull that little tab over and write the time on. The time is crucial, not for the paramedics, for when they get to a hospital. Okay? If it doesn't work, as in it's still dribbling, the paramedics will still leave it in place and just put another one above it.
Mikey, what about a few rumours, right? I've been told that, if you don't release it in 15 minutes, I'm going to lose my arm.
No, not so ever. Okay? After about 2 hours, there might be a little bit of cell damage. But they can stay on for, I think, one in the Ukrainian doctor.
The record's 28 days in
28
Ukraine.
days. Yes, he lost a limb,
It's not
but
good
he
at that
didn't
point,
lose
to be
his
clear.
life.
You
Okay?
can leave it on for 4 to 6 hours, guys, before you've got a massive problem. But what you have to understand is if you haven't put that on, he's dead.
Dead.
Right? So that's what we need. That's what you need to be thinking about, okay? Yeah. Why don't we challenge somebody to come and have a go? Show you how easy it is.
Who's never done one before? Anybody?
Who's never been anywhere near a tourniquet before? Well volunteered. Come on. Put a tourniquet on. This is your one and only chance.
There you go.
And it says British Safety Council. You must be safe.
What you're going to do is slip that over his arm so that's on the outside, okay? Right. Undo the Velcro bit there. And then pull that tight. Okay? That's it. And you pull it as tight as you can. That'll do it now. Okay. Just lock it off and let go now. Take that device and just do half a twist. Just literally
Just
let
tighten
go.
it like a tap.
Just turn that like a tap, turning a tap off. That's it. And when it's tight, what will happen is it will go under either that one or that one. Okay? So that's one. Take the strap.
And then move it there.
Yeah, that's
pull it through.
Done.
Do that, put that over and write the time on.
That is so easy.
Got
And
it?
that- and I'm
so
instructing
let's
you.
have a go at this then, right? Let's just take that off me, Mike, a sec. So what we're going to do now, right, you're going to go over there, 10 yards, no more. I've got a horrible bleed. You've been shown how to do this once, right? Oh, by the way, here's another top tip, guys, right? Prep your kit. So one of the things we like to do if we come to your company and do first aid training is get them to use your own kit. Usually it's all still in plastic wrappers. Yay! And the best one we've ever seen was a health and safety officer who put sealed tags on each first aid kit so they knew they hadn't been used. Woo-hoo, brilliant. So there's your tourniquet. I'm having a bleed. Have a go.
Okay.
Take your time. I mean, don't take too long. That's good. All over it. Give it one twist. That'll do. Otherwise, you will actually stop the circulation in my arm. Yeah. Done. Flap it back over. You've just saved my life. You've just literally saved my life. It took Mike 5 seconds to teach her that, and she's just saved my life, right? These are about 30 quid. We spend more on the compliance signs to do with slippery surfaces than we do in actually, I'm going to take that off. You've done such a good job of that, my hand is falling off, right? We've done such a good job of that. We spend more money on the signs we put in locations than on thinking about actually saving a life. And next step is, where are your first aid kits at work, guys, by the way? Where do you keep them normally, as a rule? Anyone happen to know? First aid room, that's brilliant, provided you have an injury in the first aid room, obviously. You've got to get to that kit, right, within 2 minutes, haven't you? That's the reality of it, yeah? So the sort of thing we put together are these sorts of things, where it's waterproof, sealed, and on a belt, so that while your crews can carry it, it can go in the glove box, right? So that it's with you. You've got to think operationally when you're trying to put this together. What's the other huge advantage, do you think? Once I've put that tourniquet on, and it took less than 2 minutes to teach this lady, thank you, what's the massive advantage once that's on? What can I now do? I'm free, aren't I? I could even be making phone calls. I'll let you into a little secret. You can put them on yourself, right? I've been having a minor altercation with some people in Afghanistan that was getting a little bit grumpy, and I needed to continue the argument, so we had to ask one of my colleagues to put his own tourniquet on whilst we finished the argument, and he literally self-tourniqueted himself whilst we were having that argument. That's how effective they are. It's where they come from. I would just ask you one thing. If we've sold you on these, by the way, if you don't know where to get yourself, just give us a shout. And the reason I say that is because on here, you'll see that it says CAT. There we go. Right, it says CAT. When we went out to Ukraine, the sort of trauma medic lady, she's only 22 years old, she came up to me, she hugged me and burst into tears. I mean, I do quite regularly have that effect on women, but she literally grabbed me and burst into tears because somebody is selling fake tourniquets to Ukraine. Somebody is buying cheap Chinese knockoffs and sending them to a war zone. let's not discuss what I'd like to do with them until another time, right? So first of all, if you want to save a life, you've got to have the right kit, and it's got to be accessible and in the right place in minutes. So carrying your little green box around, carrying that around, come a day of the race, you are not compliant, right? End of. Based against your first aid assessment. Now then, I said that we'd also mention, because it's kind of the industry we're in, that we'd also mention kind of heart attacks and cardiac arrests and stuff. We certainly don't have time to fully go into kind of teaching you CPR and all of that kind of stuff today. That's kind of not the plan. But here's something else. Here's something else for you to consider. Our friends at Vivesta have lent me this defibrillator. I'm super passionate about defibrillators as a rule. How long do you think you've got to get this in place, right? So somebody goes into cardiac arrest. We're going into cardiac arrest. How long do you think before you may as well put the kettle on? Roughly speaking.
A little bit.
6 to 8 minutes. It's more like 3 to 4.
5.
Give or take, right? It'll change a bit, right? But my point is this again. We need to think operationally. They won't mind me telling you, when we were down at M Sport, the rally team, they did the right thing. They've got a brilliant defibrillator. The defibrillator sits in the guardhouse on the gate, proudly presented in a box. So what we did is we created an accident on the racetrack that they have down there, which is 1,200 meters from the guardhouse. We created a simulation. I'll let you into a secret. What do you think happens within minutes of somebody having a catastrophic bleed? They go into cardiac arrest, right? Yeah. That's what happens. So what happened was we simulated the accident. We said, okay, they're going into cardiac arrest. The guy we were training said, this is brilliant. I know what to do now. I'll get the AED. And Mike went, go on then. And he said, can I use yours? And I was like, I won't be here on the day, mate. Better go and get it. So he then had to run 1.2 kilometers to the AED, remember the codes to get the AED out of the box, and run 1.2 kilometers back again. The good news was, as he collapsed, having a cardiac arrest when he got back to the incident, he was already carrying the defibrillator. There's a moral in that story somewhere. Guys, I am absolutely not telling people not to put AEDs in public locations. Of course, that's a good thing to do, right? But you need to think operationally and commercially. They're expensive, these things, right? But actually, your crew need to get to them in minutes. So part of your first aid assessment, people need to know where they are, how to get them out, how to access it, and you need to think about where you put it, okay? We've just done loads of work with the Scottish estates, Highland gamekeepers, all this sort of thing, professional deer stalkers, etc. And traditionally, these things were mounted on the estate office walls, right? Because it seems like a sensible place to put it. There is a certain demographic of person that likes to go shooting in Scotland, and they're of a certain age, and they occasionally like red wine, and they don't do an awful lot of exercise. And when they then suddenly decide to run up the side of a hill whilst carrying a shotgun, where do you think they have the heart attack? Not in the estate office, as a rule. Of course, I'm saying this really terribly now. Somebody will have a heart attack in the estate office. But you get my point. So we've reconfigured what they're looking at, and they carry these things now in the back of their pickup trucks. You're guessing, you're making your best guess, but at least you've thought about it. So we come back to this process of thinking operationally, okay? It's what you've got to do. I'm not going to go into it now, but one of the things that we do is we issue people with this. We call it an aid memoir, right? I can still remember to this day how what we used to call a 9-liner. Any ex-serviceman in the room will absolutely know what I'm talking about. I can still remember how to call an emergency medical helicopter off the top of my head. I never did it from memory, because why would you come the day of the race, right? It would make no sense, would it? Okay? So what we issue, anybody that comes on a training course with us, you get one of these. It's laminated, so if you get somebody else's blood on it, it's all right. So it's laminated, and what you do is you put it in a pocket, and you carry it with you. And then when it all kicks off, you take it out and you read it, and you follow the steps on it, and you take a breath on it, right? One of our colleagues, Claire, she has a similar military background to mine. She's now the lead paramedic for a helicopter, for an air ambulance helicopter in Southampton. And she has this thing about 10 seconds for 10 minutes. Take a breath, calm yourself down as best you can, and work out what you're going to do next. Follow the card. You're not paramedics, and it will take you through it. That's what we've got to do. I think I might just end with this. one of the biggest things that is essentially never covered, really, when we start to talk about first aid training is this. And some of you saw this video yesterday, but I want to talk about it for a minute, okay? Anybody afraid of heights? Sorry if you saw this one yesterday. Anybody afraid of heights or not like heights? Yeah, look away. Is that a technical climbing expression, sir? Shit a brick.
How many are you doing?
That's the top of the Matterhorn in Switzerland. Anyone ever eaten a Toblerone? That's what used to be on the side of a packet of Toblerone. It's not anymore because it turns out Swiss chocolate's not made in Switzerland, so they can't call it the Matterhorn anymore. But anyway, it is the Matterhorn. The good news from there is the fall is 4,700 meters straight down, and there's nothing to hit on the way down, which is frankly excellent news. But the first responder in me will tell you that the problem arises with a sudden stop at the bottom. That's when all the medical traumas happen as you hit the bottom. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, or the fact that if Andy fell off, I would have to dive the other way and counterbalance him. That's not what we're here to talk about either. What we're going to talk about today is, what do you think, and I mentioned this yesterday when we were talking about resilience, what's going on physiologically? Because no one talks about this in first aid training. What is going on physiologically, do you think, on top of that mountain? This man's shitting bricks, apparently. But apart from that, what's going on, do you think, on top of that mountain? Physiologically. Sorry? Yeah, you're not going to get rescued. What about a fight or flight mechanism, right? Big shot of adrenaline, heart racing, feeling anxious, a couple of weird things happen, vision narrows in, peripheral hearing goes. Any parents? Yep. Ever had that little moment where the little darling jogs off towards the M6 at speed the minute you took your eye off them, and you suddenly turn into a cross between somewhere between Linford Christie and Iron Man, and you do a quick 7.2 second 100 meters, scoop up the child, and as you grab the child, all of your world comes back again. The noise comes back. You go, oh, that's weird, the sound. And that's because one of the things a flight mechanism does is it hones you into the target you've got to deal with, because it thinks you're going to have a fight, essentially, right? That's what it's trying to do. Also, as I said yesterday, Chris, your hair stops growing. That's what 30 years in the police service will do for you. So, bad, right, essentially speaking. When we're trying to deal with traumatic situations, guys, that's going to happen to you. And the bit that nobody covers for me is that that's normal. One of the biggest challenges we face when we talk to people, when we teach them first aid training, is they freeze when they hit a scenario, right? And they panic. And then they doubt themselves. Why is that? Because the reality of this is that this would be somebody that works for you, somebody that you know, more likely a friend or family, actually, some form of road traffic collision, whatever it might be. So that fight or flight mechanism goes off the chart, right? So it is super critical during your training to simulate those scenarios and to give people permission to be afraid and to be anxious, because that is what's going to happen to them for real. And what they need to understand is that when that comes together, that is normal. That doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean they're no good. It doesn't mean they can't deal with it. It means their body is trying to protect them, and it is a completely natural reaction to what is about to happen. And for me, and I know Mike, this sort of stuff is absolutely critical to get across to people. The other thing is teamwork, right? What normally happens when we have some sort of first aid scenario? What normally happens? What do people do? Oh, Johnny looks bad. Luckily, Mike's doing it. Oh, wouldn't want to be him right now, right? Literally, we see it for real. Everyone stands around and looks in. Work as a team. One of the things we absolutely get people doing when we do scenario-based training is getting them to work together, right? Send somebody for the ambulance. Send somebody for the AED. If you're putting a tourniquet on, I know within minutes I'm probably going to need an AED, right? If you're doing the first aid, then get somebody to get what 3 words out and use the phone. But it's got to be practiced. Does that make sense, guys? It's got to be what we call muscle memory. Because as Sod's Law says, that what will happen is you'll come on a training course with us, you'll do the training course, and the incident will happen the week before you're due to redo your training course 3 years later, won't it? Right? And you'll be going, oh, which is for me why we strip out all of the PowerPoint nonsense, and what we do is we create muscle memory, right? And then your training reflects the environment that you're in, and all you can do then is your best. That is it. and that's all anybody asks of you, the HSE included. And that is it, guys, yeah? And I'm going to reiterate this. This is not a training course today, but if you take nothing else out of this, remember that, right? You've got minutes, not hours. You have to respond quickly. You have to have the right kit. You have to work as a team, and you have to be precise. I don't care about DRABC, Dr. ABC, March, CAC, or anything else. If they're bleeding, stop it. If they are not breathing, help them. If they are cold, make them warm, and you will save a life, right? The rest of it is window dressing. And we'll ask some questions in a minute, but I want you to take out of this is please stop ticking boxes, okay? Because it will come round and haunt you. Stop ticking boxes. I'm not asking you to do more, I'm just asking you to do it properly. And I think that's fair. Any questions, guys? Thank you very much, by the way. We've had blood and bleeding and death, and it's not always that miserable, I promise. I'm super happy. I know Simon's here as well. I'm super happy. We've probably challenged a few myths around first aid. I get that. We've perhaps undone a few people's classroom training, for which I make no apologies whatsoever. I'm really happy. If you've got questions, interested, please, I'll put this up. If you want to follow up with us later on, either see these guys or that QR code will kind of take you to us if I don't stand in front of it. Anyone got any questions at all?
Hi there. We had a scenario at a company I was working for. We was undergoing some construction work, and there was a young trainee who was operating a 4-inch grinder.
Well, I know.
With no handle
no
on
conversation ends well that starts like that, does it?
And unfortunately, it bounced on the floor and went in the air.
Yeah.
And straight away on his arm as such. We had trained first aiders. They were at the scene. What saved his life, and he sort of come home to me, was we had an ex-armour guy there that was used to trauma. He had trauma training as such.
Yeah, brilliant.
And he was able to put a tourniquet on.
Brilliant.
Our standard kit, our standard training. I'm not just saying it. Obviously, the guy probably wouldn't have survived. But so he has come home to me, and
well,
I
what
do
a
get
testament,
that
guys. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah.
Essentially, the guy that knew how to use a tourniquet saved his life. Simple as that.
Yep.
I've had people come to me, instructors come to me, and it's one of my things that I don't like is instructors come to me once, and we were doing a big event, and I was covering part of first aid, he was doing the rest. And I said to him, which system do you teach? He said, I teach Dr. ABC. And I went, it's a bit old-fashioned, mate. Don't you teach catastrophic bleed first? And he said, no, we did Dr. ABC. I said, well, surely you do tourniquets.
Pass that round.
Anyway, why on earth would I teach someone a tourniquet? I said, I'll show it them. I said, but why? He says, what's the chance of me ever using it? What's in reality the chance of me ever using an AED or doing CPR? Hopefully, as a first aider, it's never going to happen. But I like to think that I've taught somebody right. So if it does happen, you're prepared for it. And
that's why we do scenarios, guys, is to create the muscle memory, so you've actually done it. So come the day of the race, something in the back of your head goes, I remember Mike, I remember doing this or putting that on. I should just show you this, actually, just to give you an idea. We call this a save a life, right? So in here, that tourniquet is out of here, but there's a couple of bits and pieces that go in there that I want to show you, things like that, look, right? It's a proper pair of scissors that you can get, you know, lorry drivers can get their hands into, and that'll go through armoured PCE, no problem at all. Some of you here yesterday, and I spoke to you about like my Dakar accident, they took off armoured race riding gear and air vests with a pair of those. And it's just these little things, having the right kit in the right place, it's just these little things that make a difference, and having it accessible, that's what I'm trying to get at, which is what this gentleman here was saying, right? The guy knew how to use it, and it was right there. So, yeah, there's still a place for a green box. But in your place of work, you need to have something useful, accessible. Incidentally, for those of you, because I am like that geek, incidentally, the law changed last year around bleed kits. Sadly, it was as a result of Birmingham. Does anybody know the Birmingham City football player that was stabbed in the nightclub? And the nightclubs didn't have bleed kits. And sadly, as a result of that, the law was changed because they said nobody was equipped to deal with a bleed. The law came in really talking around nightclubs and all that sort of unseemingly behaviour. But if you think about it, if we're working in shunting yards, engineering houses, driving, forklift trucks, any of that sort of stuff, It's actually frighteningly realistic when we go forward. My other pet hate I should have mentioned before, but the other thing as well is, who's done CPR training? Yep, had a go, absolutely brilliant. Was it in a circle, lying on the floor, flat, right? Because that's where it's done. We had a load of fun the other day. I'm just warning you up now. Anybody involved in HGV, haulage, that sort of thing, any sort of big trucks? So we did a bit of work with Kalina, and we took a friend of ours, and he's a 21 stone, 6'6" ex-rugby league player. And what we did is we sat him behind the wheel of an Arctic lorry, because his demographic is not unlike some Arctic lorry drivers. I'm very sorry if I'm being rude. We sat him there, and we gave them the standard lesson in the room, flat on their back, doing CPR. We stood them up, and we said, okay, brilliant. Our actor then came running in. Gosh, I think Danny's having a heart attack. I think Danny's having a heart attack. And they were like, who's Danny? And I was like, oh, I think it's him. And we sat the 6'20" stone bloke behind the wheel, 10 foot in the air of an Arctic lorry. Why? Because that's where drivers have heart attacks, right? So again, the crew then had to work, what are we going to do with that? The answer is you drag him out and get him on the floor. But the point is, people hesitate. Ask yourself honestly, if you came across an RTC, which is still one of the most common causes of major injury in the UK, and the person was sat behind the wheel of a car before you heard this talk, no matter how much training you've done, would you have had the confidence to just grab that person and pull them out and do CPR? Most people, they would start panicking about necks and backs, and they would remember some PowerPoint slide somewhere going, oh, we're going to hurt his neck or hurt his ribs or hurt his back, right? Yeah, but luckily in 3 minutes' time, you don't need to worry about actually dead. That's the reality of it. Any other questions, guys? Guys? Yeah. Yeah, come see me after, there's no problem at all. Yeah. Guys, yeah, it's not the intention of today, actually, but we do actually sell the Save a Life kits. We also sell full bleed kits, depending on whether it's for you or whether it's commercially. But let's go and stand on the stand, and we can talk about that afterwards. I'm going to challenge you. I am really happy. Mike or I are super happy to come and visit your place of work, and we will look at your first aid assessments for you if you are now sitting here thinking, this is something maybe we should look at, okay? Because yes, it's a business, but I am super passionate about saving people's lives. I am done with box ticking, right? And those of you that were here yesterday and heard me talk about my Dakar Rally accident will know that I am only standing here today because somebody knew what they were doing, right? It's as simple as that, and did it. Team, thank you ever so much for your attention. Death and destruction on the stand, but really appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.